You look at the park, there's historical significance value about Weeki Wachee. It's one of these original Florida roadside attractions that had mermaids. What makes Weeki Wachee unique, it's a first magnitude spring, it's never been explored, and it's absolutely drop dead gorgeous. This cave has the mystique of being the only first magnitude spring in the state of Florida that's never been explored. You can have 20 years of cave diving experience and come into Weeki Wachee and never want to come here again. Unique to Weeki Wachee is the, no other word to describe it, but violent entrance and exit of this cave. You have got to be on your game. You can't go in here thinking this is a breeze, I'm gonna drop in, scoot through the hole, go have a fun dive.
It's the toughest entry of any cave system I've ever been in.
You have to sit there, you get your mind right, you pull, you pull, you pull. The very second your arms are burning and you know you can't pull anymore, you pull one more time and you just drop into that cave.
It's huge, and the visibility being as good as it is a bonus, because you can see, even some of the footage, you can see the part of the floor, part of the wall, and part of the ceiling, and that's just like 10% of the cave, because the cave is too big to light up. Even though we had 500 watts of light power, it just was like scratching the surface. So it's definitely the biggest tunnels of any cave I've ever been in. Now there's some caves that have big room, but this one here is big everywhere.
One of the other scientific goals that we hope to accomplish is identifying a lot of what appears to be dry formations, whether or not their origin is petrified or the origin is actually fossilized. At this point, we don't know, we can only speculate, but approximately 2,200 feet in the cave, there are draperies, or what a dry caver would refer to as a stalactite. The formations that we found in Weeki Wachee are unlike anything we've ever seen in underwater cave systems in the state thus far.
The speleocrobes, speleothems, bacterial formations, they're unique because they've never been seen, never been documented, never been studied. Nobody still knows what they are. They believe there's some type of girthite formation, which is an iron-based formation, but they also believe that it could have a very large bacterial component to it as well.
It literally looks like the surface of an entirely different planet. A lot of the formations have broken off the walls over thousands and thousands of years and made these beautiful symmetrical piles. Some of them are still attached to the wall. There's other formations and growing off the floor and everything. So that would be one goal, is to really try to find out what occurred or is occurring in that part of the cave. Some of the goals for future dives is taking the survey that we've done thus far and making sure that it's precise. We would like to give the state as precise a survey as possible. On Saturday, the second half of our team will be moving a radio location beacon into the cave. It operates at a very low but powerful frequency, and it's much like the radio locate they use to track polar bears, but slightly different. The magnetic field is obviously a lot stronger than what they would put around a polar bear's neck. And what happens is the divers will place the location ring, which is a large copper ring powered by a 12-volt battery, in the cave, and then on the surface we'll have what's called a tracking sphere, or in this particular case disc, and we will be able to more or less pinpoint exactly a surface to subsurface example of where the beacon is in the cave compared to where it actually is occurring on land.
Okay, the radio locate, it'll give us a definite point on the surface that corresponds to the cave, and we use it so that the survey, which has some inaccuracies in it, now we have a point that we can correct everything to. It all has to do with mapping out the system and making sure that it's correct. The divers under the water, they're carrying a beacon that actually sets up the signal. So they carry that and electronics pack, and they plug that in, set it off, and then it sends the signal up. And what they have to do is just make sure it's level, because if it's tilted to one side, then the signal is going to be off to one side. So they want to make sure it's perfectly up and down. Once they get it set up, they just leave it, and then we come along on the surface. We can hear that signal, and we look for actually what we call a null, where there's no signal, and that tells you where the beacon is. So right in here is where we think Sheck's Folly is. According to the map, it should be right in this area here.
Level it out. It was a real silty area, so kind of nasty.
So if our map is right, the junction is right back there in those woods. It's very, very sensitive. It's inside of a building. That seems to be it, right in here, someplace in this area. Okay. Yep, I think it's right there.
How far down is he?
260 feet. So yeah, 260 feet below you there is.
Big hole.
Yep, big hole, Weeki Wachee River.
Well, I had to scooter out to about 800 feet to the first tee, which is a distinct marking in the cave, and it goes up to about 190 feet. Still don't know if it was successful or not, but we turned it on and waiting to hear from you guys, and it was awesome.
The decompression, excluding bottom time, is just over 13 hours. The bottom time at this point is planned for 3 hours. So for a total, just over 16 hours of total runtime.
How long is the longest dive you've ever done?
This will be it. There is no portion of preparation for exploring one of the deepest caves in the United States that's fun. It literally isn't until you're finished and there is a sense of accomplishment and something that you can bring back before everybody can sit down and say, hey, it was worth it. But until then, it really is an uncomfortable and sometimes miserable thing to do.
One of the interesting things about our teams is that we're all different ages. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have what we call day jobs. Some of us have night jobs. But we all come together to do this for the love of what we do. My wife is an attorney. I build software. Brett washes windows. Paul teaches scuba diving. Scott Pulliam builds houses. We run the gamut, and it's all this shared appreciation for this beautiful natural resource that you don't find anywhere else in the world but Florida.
It's just not been diveable for so long. To finally have a chance to dive here, you know, it's like having access to the forbidden fruit. All of a sudden, it's not forbidden anymore, you know. So it's like, what's the word I'm looking for? Nirvana of a chance to go do something that's just been out of reach all this time. All of a sudden, it's reachable. So, and it's, you know, in terms of entries, it's the toughest entry of any cave system I've ever been in, no matter what part of the world I've been. There's so much water coming out of here. It's hard to imagine that, you know, we're able to get in once the flow is below 100 cubic feet per second. You know, so if you think about 100 cubic feet per second hitting you in the face, it's hard to imagine we're able to get in when it gets that low, which is really not that low, but it doesn't take much more than 100, and it's not possible for us to get in. It got as weak as 93 cubic feet per second. So that's the weakest it's ever been. The strongest it's ever been is like 265. So it's quite a range there, but the size of the opening has always been the same size. So I can't even imagine trying to get in when it's flowing at the maximum rate.
Now the reason why the drought is bad for Florida, obviously, is for agriculture, people who live here, and the fact that all of our water in Florida comes from the Floridan aquifer. A lot of people think just because you're on city water that somehow it comes from some other magical place, when it actually all comes from the Floridan aquifer. And the big problem is we pull water up from the aquifer. In some cases the water can be over 100 years old, but it certainly takes a lot longer for rainwater to make it to that depth. So we're pulling a pure water at a higher exchange rate than nature can naturally replace it. And it's a problem Southwest Florida Water Management and the state are trying to work on, and it's a big problem. The reason the drought is good for us, obviously, is as you'll see the spring throughout the documentary, you'll notice that even though it's beautiful, blue, and pretty, it's over a foot shallower than normal. And currently, we're looking at just about 100 CFS, which means 100 cubic feet per second coming out of the spring. Under some conditions in the past, the spring has been up to or close to 250 CFS. And so you can see why that would be beneficial for us. The opening at the bottom of the crevasse, before you actually enter into the cave, the opening at the bottom of the crevasse is about the size of a Volkswagen Bug's hood, or the size of a barroom table. And so even at 100 cubic feet per second coming out of an opening that big, we have to move all of our equipment through there, including ourselves. And it takes a specially trained group of individuals and a lot of patience and time to move the gear in, move the divers in, and of course, move ourselves out. In 2007, we literally had 3 days of rain, and within the 5th day, the spring was practically undiveable. We could start experiencing a normal rainy cycle or have several hurricanes, and we may not be, it could be beyond my lifetime the next time this window of opportunity opens.